Assalamu alaikum. This is Salam Al Muradi, Muslim Public Affairs Council. Thank you for joining us for this very important conversation. And I have my colleagues, my brothers, Hussam Ailoush, Council on American Islamic Relations, LA, and Dr. Ahmed Sabah, Chairman of the Islamic Shura Council of Southern California. And we're going to be talking about the current situation in Gaza and how it's impacting us as American Muslims here, how it's going to be impacting America as we see this situation continuing and probably going to continue for quite some time. I'm estimating this is going to be an issue for the rest of the century, and we'll probably have to deal with it for the next 20 to 30 years as something on top of our agenda. I wanted to ask both of you first, why do you think that, there was a time when people didn't even care about Palestine. They didn't think about Palestine. Then if we brought Palestine up, they said, oh, that's an Arab foreign issue. Why are you guys talking about that? Why do you think that was the case, and how that's changed now in terms of how Americans are looking at the situation?
Go ahead, Hussam, if you'd like to start.
Sure thing. Well, thank you, first of all, Salam and Dr. Ahmed, for allowing me to be part of this conversation. And I do apologize. My voice is half gone. I was about to cancel, but I said, no, this is our first.
No, I'm glad.
I wouldn't cancel. I'm having my hot tea and being here. So, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa ala Rasulullah, in the name of Allah, God Almighty, the most gracious, the most merciful, and may His peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and upon his family and companions. It's a refreshing thing to see a change, as you said, Salam, where people are. We were convinced, we were told that the issue of Palestine is over. Look, Israel is making peace with its Arab neighbors, with the Saudis, with the Emiratis, with Bahrainis, and Oman and Morocco, and Palestinians are insignificant to the Palestinian issue. Imagine, the Palestinians are no longer important, as Netanyahu said in his UN speech. He said, we cannot allow the Palestinians to have a veto on the Arab-Israeli conflict, which is no longer an Arab-Israeli conflict. It's because most of the Arab regimes and governments have given up. They've chosen that the well-being of the rule and the benefits they get from staying in power is more important than resolving the Palestinian issue. And unfortunately, that was the take taken by our government, not only under Trump, but also continued under Biden. Trump focused on making these side deals between Israel and its Arab leagues, the Abrahamic Accords, as they call them. And Biden didn't break from that, thinking that they can watch Israel continue to build settlements, illegal settlements, take lands, engage in violence against the Palestinians. And we're all talking about way before October 7th. Obviously, people can say the Palestinian plight and dispossession has been going on for 75 years, and that is absolutely true. But since we're just talking now about the last couple of years, yes, the world thought that Israel can continue to take land, grab land, isolate Palestinians, intimidate them, terrorize them, put them in cages in Gaza, and semi-cages in every city throughout the West Bank, and demonize them to the point where it becomes difficult for anybody to take on their cause in America. And people moved on. There are other things happening in the world, and people forgot until people started witnessing the atrocities being committed. Basically, we're watching a genocide unfolding in front of our eyes. And there are many factors, and we'll probably have time to discuss many of them. But I think the biggest factor of all is social media, and the fact that social media provided a democratic access to information, whereas many years ago, in the former atrocities that Israel committed, it had to go through the filtering process, quote unquote, of the mainstream media, which is in bed with all those who actually benefit from war. the industrial, defense industrial complex that makes a lot of money from making wars. So for the average person today in America and the West in general, in Europe, receiving that uncut information from photojournalists on the ground, confirmed, repeated, duplicated in ways that you can't deny it anymore. We train young people, we teach young people to speak up in America and the West. We teach them to stand up for human rights and human dignity. And they've done so against racism in America. It's the same young people who stood when it was time to say Black Lives Matter. It's the same people who stood with the immigrants. So it wasn't that difficult for them as they watched the atrocities to say, well, that also deserves, Palestinian lives matter too. And that's why we see. Now we see a gap between the masses, the people, especially younger people. And I say younger, maybe 30 and younger. Actually, today, even older people are on social media. But also the establishment, the political establishment, which tends to be usually more conservative, older, and operating on old data. The data of 80, 90% of people in America support Israel unconditionally, which is no longer.
But now we're seeing now, I believe 60 to 70% of the American public are now opposed to this. So even in the last few weeks, there's been a shift even among the older demographic. So the whole world is outraged. Most Americans are outraged, but we still see this political establishment taking a stranglehold on American politics and making America complicit in these war crimes. And so, I wanted to continue the conversation then with Ahmed Sobah, chairman of Islamic Shura Council. Ahmed, we're only 1% or 2% of the population, right? American Muslims are, let's say we're 6 million, or some say we're 5 million, whatever. That's 1 to 2% of the population. How do we position ourselves to be part of the movement that Hussam outlined for us? Young people, a lot of progressives, social justice movement. How do we position ourselves as Muslims to be part and even lead that movement, and not just talk to ourselves? That sometimes, unfortunately, we do that too often.
Well, the good news, we're doing it. The good news that your organizations, CARE and MPAC, already realize the importance of building alliance and partnership with all the good-hearted, open-minded Americans who actually are brave and willing to stand up for justice. That's the beauty of America. When I go to a church, I talk about Islam, for example. I talk about my community and the positive things about my community, and remove and refute the misconceptions about my community. And I say, when I go to the churches, when I go to, for example, travel to the Middle East, I do the opposite. I'm there talking about the good people in America, not only the ones they see on the news, not only the ones they see in our government. So in general, my experience that Americans love justice, Americans love fair life, and care about people's lives. And that's what we've been working on and capitalizing on, whether it's CARE or MPAC or any activists in America has been capitalizing on these good people. All what they need to do is just see the truth. As Hussam said, the filtration of the media, the orchestrated, planned effort over the past several decades to remove anything from the media that will make people see the truth of what's happening and what Israeli government is doing to the Palestinians. Social media helped us in showing the truth to people. All what's needed right now is to know how to present the cause in a very diplomatic, very proper, very relevant way to the people in the United States. And I think it's an easy sell with what we have right now. So that's how I see it.
So let's get to that. How do we frame it to Americans? Because, let's say in 2 weeks, things relatively um, change and I don't want to say calm down, but you know what I mean. That it doesn't. It's not going to be on the top of the news in a month or two. But this is an issue that is important to America. American tax dollars have financed war crimes. I mean, I don't understand. I don't think that Americans understand the gravity of the situation. There were war crimes in Iraq, right? That the United States prosecuted the war against Iraq, which was not a war. It was an assault, and 800 up to 800,000 children under the age of 5 were killed. And now Israel is saying, well, you did that to Iraq, we can do that to Gaza, and they're gonna do that, and then after a month or two, they're gonna hope that people forget, that they're not going to, it's just other things are gonna occupy the news cycle. So how do we frame it in a way that it's not just about us, but it's about all of America and how it's important for America? Yeah, I mean, I can talk about, hey, if this is going to continue, what you're going to do is you're going to create World War III, and you're going to go. Do we really want to go to war against 1.5 billion or 2 billion Muslims? Because they see that each Muslim now in the Muslim world is seeing it as an assault against them, not just the Palestinians. They see the suffering of the Palestinians. Their hearts are with Palestine, but they also see that, hey, this is coming down the road. It's not just going to be Palestine. They're going to go after the Gulf. They're going to go after Iran. They're going to go after even Pakistan and try to dominate this ideology in the region. So I don't know if that makes sense. If you guys want to comment on that, or or take that and see how else this applies to Americans. Go ahead, Hassan.
Very quickly, I would say a couple of things. One is, it depends on the audience. America is, as diverse as it could be. People have different interests that drive their political engagement or response. If you're talking to people who care about their tax money, want to remind them how almost $4 billion a year and now $14 billion gift given to one of the richest, wealthiest states in the world, and that is Israel. How is that fair? At a time when we can't even take care of our own veterans, our own homeless people, our own seniors. And that's a very legitimate question to be asked. Number two, we have to realize that this is a little bit more complicated than the illegal invasion of Iraq. Why is that? Because it's done in the shadow of anti-Semitism. And the situation is, the supporters of Israel and its apartheid regime have weaponized anti-Semitism and mixed, what is real anti-Semitism that needs to be addressed and combated, and what is legitimate criticism of Israel. And honestly, we cannot bypass this confusion because they've played it well. So now, to the point where calling for a ceasefire is labeled anti-Semitic. Criticizing Israel bombardment of Gaza is anti-Semitic. Mentioning the name of Israel is anti-Semitic. So for us, the only way to do that is by continuing to partner with the Jewish community, especially those who have been very vocal against Israel misrepresenting its atrocities as something done in the name of the Jewish community. Allies and partners such as JVP, if not now, and many others. And we have to continue to work with them even more and deepen the relationships. There are so many rabbis, thousands of rabbis around the country, hundreds of synagogues, and so on and so forth. So that is extremely important. So we don't allow them to depict this political conflict that is about an occupation, an illegal occupation, and an apartheid system, to depict that as a war between Muslims and Jews. They've had some success over the past decades. I think that is changing very quickly. The other aspect of that is the aspect of social justice, human rights, that should continue to be how we speak to people, because something you alluded to, Salam, what we see today, injustice being committed in our name. You have to remind people this is not just a foreign issue. It's a foreign issue that is domestically funded. Almost 80% of the weapons used by Israel have been supplied by the US, including the bunker busters, which have eliminated complete residential towers with hundreds of people living in them. That is US weaponry and money. And one, it is immoral, it is morally wrong. Number two, it is creating animosity towards America. And now we're dealing with 57 Muslim majority countries that are looking at us as enablers of a genocide. And people ask the question, why? What is this? Islamophobia? Is this colonialism, neo-colonialism? But the thing is, it is not even only Muslim majority countries. African nations, actually Latin American countries, had been at the forefront of cutting ties with Israel and expressing dismay with the US policies. And last but not least, we have to make this issue an election issue also. Elected officials and candidates need to hear from potential voters saying that this is an issue that will determine how we vote. And then politicians will pay attention. If your seat is dependent on your position on a genocide, you will pay attention to stopping the genocide.
I would add to that sadly, the reality is that people will forget. Give it a few days, few weeks. Already people are forgetting, or people don't want to hear about it within the American society. But we can work on several things, just like the pro-Israeli camp been working so hard to keep the support of Israel alive in the minds and the hearts of the American people through media, through movies, through books, through influencing politicians and being involved in the election process, just like Hussam said. So we need to keep that going, and we need to tackle a couple of points that are dear and loved by the American people, that they saw the threat of it within the last few months. Number one, their freedom of speech. This is the maybe most important value that Americans cherish and love. And they saw that their freedom of speech is extremely in danger and and it's been taken away from it. They've been stripped from their freedom of speech with the accusation of anti-Semitism, which is not true. So that is something that Americans will never forget. That, hey, I could not speak up. I could not say. I lost my job as a president of a university. I lost my job as a dean of a college or a professor because I criticized the actions of the Israeli government. So that is something that we need to make sure that we keep reminding people about it, and not to the point that to threaten them, to say, oh, if you do this, and make them afraid of speaking up against injustice, but fighting for their right of freedom of speech. That's number one. Number two is our money and our dollar, our tax dollars, how they could be used and utilized locally and inside the United States to improve the standards of life of many Americans, instead of giving it to a foreign entity that's committing a genocide. So these are 2 points that we can work on as well, and keep them and put them in the strategy that we're as we move forward and as we're getting further away from the incidents that's taken away.
Let me mention somebody's name and you tell me what you think. Elise Stefanik. Do you know who that is? Republican from New York.
The only.
The House Education Committee. She said she was asking these presidents of Ivy League schools, how can you allow people to say intifada, because intifada means genocide of Jews, and allow and tell the Congress, maybe you guys should get some people who know what they're talking about to advise your officials, because they're sounding so stupid. But I think that's one example that you're referring to, Ahmed, about how this is now suppressing freedom of speech. Now people are afraid to, as Hussam said, any criticism of Israel, this is what's going to happen. They're going to create these laws that say, if you say anything that is anti-Zionist, that is then anti-Semitic, which is now illegal, and the federal government can prosecute you for such a crime. I think that if I were an American and I forget about whether it's Palestine, Israel, any issue, somebody coming and telling me that I can't say something, especially if I can criticize the flag, I can criticize God, I can criticize the president, but I can't criticize the state of Israel. I think it's ludicrous. But that's where freedom of speech is getting suppressed, and we all know that intifada simply means uprising, and it's an uprising against oppression. And there's uprising against Arab governments. The Arab Spring was an intifada. But anyway, this is how I think the establishment is continuing to lie, or they're completely ignorant. Either way, it's reckless, it's dangerous, and it's taking our country more and more into this confrontation into the region. So with that, I want to ask you then, how is this affecting our students now, Muslim students on campuses, or even pro-Palestinian students? It could be a lot of non-Muslims who are supporting the Palestinian cause, and they're getting intimidated, they're getting doxxed, they're getting so many threats. Yes, for the Jewish students and those who are pro-Israel, if there's any intimidation or attacks against them, we stand against it. But it seems like nobody's talking about what's happening to the other side on this issue. If you can comment, based on your conversations with student groups.
I can start on that. The Shura Council reached out to the MSA West, which is the Muslim Student Association of all the associations in California, Oregon, and Washington. And we first asked them what's going on, what are the things that you're getting from the students on campus. And we spoke to many students as well. And the sad and the scary reality that there are attacks on students who are speaking up against this tyranny and injustice. There are Muslim female students wearing the hijab being harassed, and some of them, their property were taken away or damaged, their laptops. So there are several things that are going on, and unfortunately it's got into their minds and hearts to be afraid not to speak up because they might lose a job offer, they might not graduate, they might be kicked out from the university. The other side was has been strongly and still strongly working to intimidate people from speaking against the state of Israel. So we reached out to them and said, listen, especially for the Muslim students, and listen, the other students clubs and other students who are gathered with one faith, they have support from their own faith community organizations. We said, we are in that, we just want to let you know that we are supporting you. Whatever it needs, whatever it takes to make you feel that you're supported by your own community, we are willing to do it. And I think the message was received very well by our Muslim students on campus. But the sad reality that campuses have been suppressing, even though they're allowing some of the demonstrations, but they are still threatening students if they see a certain word or certain slogan that could be considered anti-Semitic, which is not the intent behind it, and then they will face consequences. And I know a high schooler in our area that was sued by a Jewish family because of interaction between him and their son, and to the point that he was detained. They took him in. Now he's out. The case is going on. But unfortunately, this has been the case at many campuses in California.
Hossam, you can comment on what's happening now, but I also want you to comment on the Irvine 11. Many years ago, there were a group of Irvine students that stood up against the Israeli ambassador, calling, again, it was, I think, during the bombing of Gaza, another bombing of Gaza, and they were actually arrested, and they found a law that you cannot, you cannot use the heckler's veto, and they were all charged and convicted. What happened to those students? Where are they now? How did they get through the school, even though they had to endure that kind of singling out? Every student does some kind of civil disobedience, sit-ins, they occupy administration buildings, they protest, but it seems that only this case is the only time that students were actually arrested for standing up for the truth, really.
Sure.
So what happened to them?
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought up this issue because it's a reminder that all the intimidation in the world cannot stop people from speaking up and doing what's right. In this case, all of them are successful in their own fields. A couple of them are medical doctors serving on the statewide board of care now. One of them, actually, and another one is a care employee. He does our community organizing. Another one is a very successful physician in LA. The other one became a lawyer and then decided to start a business, a chain, shawarma chain now, going around taking San Diego, mashallah, by storm. They're all doing very well, mashallah. They're very proud of every single one of them. And it's a reminder that, yes, at the time when you're speaking up, you're going to get some heat. This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even reminds us in the Quran. حَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا. That people think they will be allowed to say, we believe, without being tested. So, yes, part of our belief system as Muslims is to speak up for what is right, speak up against what is wrong. And we know it is required for us to do so, and we know we're going to get some heat. That's why, one of the shortest surahs in the Quran, Wal Asr, at the end, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, said those who, the best of people, the ones who will be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the ones who enjoin good and truth, but also enjoin in perseverance. Why? Because when you speak truth, you're going to get some heat. And it's a path that, relating to the question you asked earlier, and that is with the youth. We need to, one, model that as the adult community, the older, the grown-ups of the community. Not you and I and Ahmed here, and alhamdulillah, I think we do that, inshallah, through the work we do through our organizations and the service to the community. But we need every mosque in our country, 2,500 mosques in America, to take lead, allow the sermons, the khutbahs, to speak up against injustice, not just in Palestine, everywhere else, including our own country. We need the Muslim business people, the Muslim activists, the Muslim politicians, and at every level, model this part of our faith, and that is to speak up, because then our youth at colleges would know that this is the only right way to live as a Muslim, to live as a human being. And then if they get some heat, yes, as organizations, we can try to support them, whether it's the Muslim organizations, whether it's the National Lawyers Guilds or ACLU and others. We will do our best, but there's a price for speaking up, and we should all be willing to pay some price, because it's very little compared to the price being paid by those who are receiving or on the receiving end of that injustice, whether it's people facing racism in America, xenophobia in America, or Palestinians facing war crimes in Palestine.
You remember, if you may add just point, I remember when that took place, the Irvine 11 incident, I remember in the video, it was very clear. There was a Zionist person, I don't know who he was, a teacher or worker or someone from outside. When they were escorting the students out of the hall, he was telling everyone, you're going to fail, you're not going to graduate, you're going to fail your class. And it was like very, very obnoxiously threatening them. And we all found out that he was just false threats. Nothing happened. One of those students actually graduated, went to Harvard the next year. So I tell that to the students: don't be intimidated, don't be afraid of those who are right. They just want you to stop. They want you to not to speak up.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, we have a lot of questions from our audience, and so we'll just do this. We have about 20 minutes left in our program. We want to save Hassam's voice because he probably has to do a khutbah tomorrow. So let him rest his cords for tonight. But if we could just go over these questions and give brief answers, even though each question sounds like it deserves another conversation. One question is, why are Muslim world leaders so passive?
I don't think. I don't know. that's frustrating for all of us to see the passivity. I think they are afraid to lose their positions, the leaders of those. I mean, the people are not passive, the communities and the nations. And
Can you explain that distinction for some
oh, yeah,
people who may not
absolutely.
understand that there's
Me and Hussam lived in the Middle East, lived among
yeah.
the Arab nations several, and we see that the leaders of the more majority of the Arab countries do not represent or reflect the positions and the opinions of their people. And because of that, they're always afraid or worried that to lose their positions, and that's why they are in cooperation with other superpowers, Western powers, to keep them in power, to keep them where they are. So that is the reality of the matter. Now, nevertheless, some of them might not be, and they don't like what's going on as a genocide, but they don't have the power, they don't have the ability to oppose the power of the United States or the power of the Western powers.
Sam, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Ahmed said. The truth is, many of the leaders in that part of the world are a product of, modern day, I would say, U.S. imperialism in the region, and a continuation of the colonialism that happened from the Western European countries in that region. There is a perception that the Arab world and the Muslim world cannot rule itself. So the U.S., one of its main pillars of foreign policy had been to preserve the status quo and oppose democracy in that region. It's sad to say so. And this has been probably a number one foreign policy for Israel, and Israel has a lot of sway on our foreign policy in America. So seeing a democracy in the Middle East is a big no-no. We saw that, during the Arab Spring. Israel made it very clear it opposes democracy because it's much easier to deal with dictatorships. Dictators are easy because you know their price. Their price is very simple: stay in power. Democracies are difficult because democracies will have to respond to the will of the people. And the will of the people overwhelmingly is to see a free Palestine, an end of the occupation, an end of the apartheid system. So what we're dealing with is the chicken or the egg, basically. There's no surprise. The overwhelming majority of these regimes are basically sticking to the instructions given to them. So I don't expect much. Obviously, those who dare to speak up, I mean, I don't want to get into now global politics, face, those who belong to somehow democratic nations. I would say Malaysia, Turkey, Turkey, Malaysia, Pakistan, Bangladesh. There is some form, not a perfect, but some form of democracy there. And those who speak up pay a price of demonization, undermining of their economies. Where's Imran Khan now, right? The only Pakistani leader who actually spoke strongly in support of the Palestinian rights. And Malaysia has been speaking up to their credit. Turkey has been speaking up to its credit. So it's not completely zero, but we would have loved to see more. But I have to say one thing to American Muslims in specific. We, as American Muslims, as Muslims of the world, we have more influence than probably all the Muslim world combined, all the other 2 billion people. Because at the end of the day, we can influence U.S. foreign policy because we are U.S. citizens. If we exercise our rights and our mandates, our duties, we can change it in ways that 100 million people in Egypt would never be able to. They can be on the street, they can shout, they can scream, they can't change U.S. foreign policy. So let's not worry about what they do. Let's worry about what we should be doing. And enough of us getting organized politically, building the coalitions, educating the rest of the public so we can change those policies.
100. That's 100.
And that's why there's a vicious attack on our faith and religion in America. So we do not have any role to affect or impact our foreign policies.
Well, you're right. That's what the pro-Israel side tries to do. They hire these people that comb through statements and this and that and take things out of context and try to scare people away from us. Try to make us look like the extremists. But I think lately they're beginning to look more extremists with their tactics of trying to suppress free speech, trying to malign innocent people, trying to say that what Israel is doing is rational, which I find that amazing, and serving American interests. I mean, there's a time when we have to say Israeli interests have to be separate from American interests. There's this notion that these two are tied and joined at the hip, and I think we need to start talking more about Israeli. If Israel wants to do that, that's fine. That is not American interests. That's not serving America. And so I agree with Hussam that we can really be part of that conversation and direct it in a way that will help the Palestinian people and help human rights. I mean, what a shame that human rights now has taken such a hit, because now the United States cannot claim to do anything in the name of human rights. It's hypocritical, and I think there's a lot that needs to be done to rehabilitate that. Another question asks, is this apartheid? Should we normalize calling the situation apartheid? I think it's gone beyond apartheid now to ethnic cleansing and genocide. I mean, when you take out fuel and water and food and communication, that is what's interesting about terrorism, they say terrorism is when you target civilians to achieve a political objective. If this isn't targeting civilians to achieve, with terror to achieve a political objective, then what else, what else is this is terrorism. And we should call it for what it is: ethnic cleansing, genocide, and all of the above. Do you guys want to comment on that?
I mean, very quickly. I mean, it's not a rhetorical thing. It's not a statement to put down Israel to say apartheid. This is what every single human rights organization in the world have said. What many leading Israeli, usually they're retired, leading officials, elected officials in Israel have said. This is what every human rights advocate, almost, Jimmy Carter, people have looked at it. They've only deferred to what extent is that level of apartheid geographically and politically. But everybody agrees what Israel has been doing and imposing on the Palestinian people, it is an apartheid system. So now for us, for the rest of us in America, to catch up to that is, better late than never. But I agree with Salam. We're not even just talking about apartheid. Even survivors of the South African apartheid system, Desmond Tutu, Mandela, late Mandela and late Desmond Tutu, and even the son of Mandela and others have said the apartheid of South Africa was more bearable, is less detrimental than the apartheid of Israel, because the apartheid of Israel aims to erase the Palestinian people. The apartheid of South Africa aims to apartheid. That's what it is. Apartheid is to separate, segregate Black Africans, from the rest of the country. In under the Israeli apartheid system, it's an attempt to eliminate, erase of the Palestinian identity, culture, presence, and now lives, as we see in Gaza and the West Bank.
Another question asks, how can I, as a regular citizen, get through to my government, Congress, local government? I know both of you have been involved heavily with various members of Congress and city governments. First of all, it was astounding that everyone from the president to the Congress to the governor to the state legislature to the city council to the dog catcher, started saying, I stand in solidarity with Israel. And yet you go to them and say, can you call for a ceasefire? They say, well, we cannot get involved in foreign policy. So it's really showing you the intimidation against these public officials, that they cannot speak their conscience. It's just amazing how corrupt our political system is. So how do we deal with that corruption? I mean,
each one of us need to understand, do not underestimate the power of your voice, the power of your email, the power of your letter, the power of you going to their office, to their local office in your city, in your neighborhood. Each congressman, each representative has a local office. You go stand up there, you go ask to meet, you send a letter, go there every day in a nice way, in a professional way, with a polite way. There is a community member who've been going to our local congresswoman every day with a pot of plants, of flowers, or box of chocolate. And I'm here to express my support to the Palestinian people. I'm here to express my support to ceasefire. Constant communication is extremely important. That, and you do that, and you then you encourage others to do that the same. And you take, this time it's 2 people, next week will be 5 people, the week after will be 10 people. Just keep encouraging people to do the same, because that's what they understand, the language of votes and financial donations to their campaigns. When we met with the mayor of Los Angeles many years ago, with Dr. Maher Hathoud, we asked the community to reach out to the office and call for the same thing again. Why did you support the atrocities against Gaza? And when we asked the office when we got there, did you receive calls from our community? And they said, yes, we did. But for every call we got from your community, we got 10 or 20 calls from the other side. So do not underestimate the power of our voices. When, yes, we need to go to demonstrations and protests and walk in the streets of the cities, but also at the same time, we need to go to our local representatives with our checkbooks and say, listen, we can support you, we can vote for you, but you have to take our position, our points of view with you and voice it out. Don't just ignore what we're saying. Hussam said something very pivotal earlier today. He said the election is coming, and we have to make sure that people understand there's a price for supporting a genocide. If each one of these congressmen, if each one of these representatives wins the elections this year, after all what they said and did about supporting a genocide, then we lost. You talk about another 20 years of them not caring about our voices. But if some of them feel the heat of them standing up against with the injustice and saying what they said in support of the Israeli atrocities, and there's a price for that, we need to make sure that they so your role as a citizen comes by communicating with your representatives, showing them that we exist, we vote, and we support.
All right. Another question has to deal. See here. We already talked about Muslim students. Oh yeah. Okay. So this question has to deal with, again, it's dealing with our civil rights here. How do we deal with this new McCarthyism in America? Who should we be talking to? What should we be doing to safeguarding ourselves against this new McCarthyism?
Okay, I would start by, I mean, I'm gonna link a couple of questions together because I've been reading through some of the questions. One is, how do we win? First of all, we have to have faith. For us as Muslims, we are a community of faith. For those who are not Muslim, I'm sure you have something that grounds your faith. Have faith that at the end of the day, justice will prevail, as long, there's a condition, as long as there are enough brave, principled people who pursue it. It takes longer sometimes, but it's going to happen. And especially as Muslims, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants support and victory to those who stand for justice. So alhamdulillah, we know, thank to God, we know that this is going to happen. Never lose faith. Never be weak in your trust in Allah.
Can I just interrupt you? And just listening to Palestinians in Gaza and their resilience, their heroism in standing up. I mean, there are bombs, and this girl is asked, "What are you going to do? What would you like to do when you grow up?" She says, "I want to be an engineer so I can rebuild the hospitals and the schools." I mean, if you can't get inspired from that, then you don't have a pulse. So just wanted to add that
Absolutely.
That gives us inspiration. Yeah.
Wallahi, it does for me every day. When I watch these things, I feel little compared to these giants, no matter what their age might be. However, I would say, to combat McCarthyism and in order to change how politicians are voting and acting, it's about building power in America, real power. A photo op is not a real power. A quick meeting, even for a fundraising event where you go and write a check, $1,000 check to a member of Congress who never hears back from you again. And Allah is my witness. I've heard from politicians saying the easiest money is the Muslim money because you only have to take a picture. That's it for some. We have to stop doing this. If you're going to be giving money, do it through an organization or an organized effort.
Yeah.
That follows up with these politicians so we can hold them accountable on their votes and what they support. And the key is to join collective effort. Be persistent, as Dr. Ahmed was saying, calling and following up and all of that, but also be part of an organized effort. Find out, and you can be member of more than one organization. You have a local MPAC, MAS, CARE, AMP, MSA, JVP. Find the organization or many organizations that you find to be close to your heart and join their effort, because collective effort is what's going to make a difference. And remember, we're going to win some and lose some. That's how it happens. APAC wins some and loses some. APAC has a lot of money, yes. But you know what? It takes a lot of effort to make a pig look good. It's going to take a lot of makeup. They need a lot of money because they're at the end
putting lipstick on a pig. That's the saying.
That's the saying, exactly. But the
He's a lot of lipstick over there.
Yep. A lot of makeup, a lot of lipstick, because you're talking about a genocide. How do you make a genocide be digestible? For us, it's going to cost way less because all it costs us is spotlight. We just need to spotlight, shine a light on the injustices going on there. So that costs way less money. Just be there, be persistent, build the coalitions, and be part of collective efforts.
Ahmed, there's a question. What are the key complexities or hurdles that we have to overcome when trying to build our collective support for Palestine? Can you talk about some of the internal challenges within our own community and how we're overcoming them?
That is I love our community, and I think we are doing great, and we are proceeding and moving forward in a very great pace, at a very great pace. But there is something that's going to keep pulling us back, which is we unfortunately are easily divided, can easily say, I just want to work by myself. I have a joke that I say, if we have 6 million or 8 million Muslims in America, I'm glad not all of them are millionaires. Otherwise, we will have 8 million masjid in America. Everyone will open his own masjid. Everyone will open his own CARE, his own MPAC, the sad reality that we can easily be dragged into a fight or an argument or a debate between each other by many of those provokers. There are people, their job is to create division. People online, on social media, and say something bad about you on my behalf or to me on your behalf, and we jump into that right away. A few years ago, we tried to create an umbrella organization for all the Palestinians in America. We met in Chicago, and we invited all the Palestinian organizations in America. And you bring up things are so silly that will easily divide us and not make us work together. These wanted to be Islamic, these want to be secular, these wanted to be Fatah, these wanted to be so and so. We tend to do that, and I think that's because of years and decades of dictatorship that we lived under. We did not know how to work together as teams. You look at Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. They said so many bad things about each other, but once Barack Obama became the president, they worked together. She was his Secretary of State. Now compare that to two brothers who run against each other in the local masjid elections. They become sworn enemies for the rest of their lives. We're not used to work to know how to work in a democratic environment within our own community. So we need to understand the differences that MPAC and CARE, both amazing organizations, but they have different way of doing things. Doesn't make one is evil and one is good. They just work together. We have to understand that, yes, might disagree on certain things, but look at us here. We're talking with each other. That's how it should be. So this is the biggest hurdle that I think we always lose, make us lose momentum to move forward. So if we can let go of these things and understand our target and our goal, and I love Gaza and Palestine because it's more well, after Trump, Gaza and Palestine, they were so good in uniting us, right? We are so, and I love that cause because it makes us work together. So inshallah, we'll keep it on. And that's in my opinion, that's the biggest hurdle. I mean, there are other small stuff here and there we can overcome.
I think the more we spend time working and the less we spend time just chatting is better. When you work, you're forced to just focus on the goal, and all this other stuff just takes care of itself. But when you're not working and you're just pontificating, or you become give your hot take, that's when we get fractured. I like Dr. Hatout's way of talking about unity. He said, unity is not conformity. He actually believed that unity is managing people's differences of opinion, and that should be at the leadership, is doing that management. And then Aga Said, the late Aga Said, also said we should have a division of labor with a unity of purpose. So I like those. I like those two men a lot. God bless them. God honor them. God bring them closer to under His wings of mercy, and really reward them for all they did. Hussam, I know, again, want to save your vocal cords, but you have the last word.
Well, thank you, Salam and MPAC, for hosting us tonight. Really pleasure, and that is a continuation of a thanks to Shura Council, which had the meeting last week, and we had a chance to speak with the leadership there, mashallah, and then the idea came up, why don't we follow up with this meeting? So thank you. I think we need to continue to engage our community, mashallah. I'm so excited about the growing interest in political engagement, civic engagement within the Muslim community. It brings so much joy to my heart seeing that across the country. People want to give money to build efforts, PAC money, social justice work, civic engagement, youth empowerment, and all of that. And we need it in every city, every state where you're at. The last thing I want to comment on, because I saw one of the questions, about social media, how to comment without being sued. Nothing guarantees you're not being sued. You can comment all the good things and be sued just for the heck of it.
And you cannot comment. You cannot comment and be sued. So
exactly. But what you can do, you can reduce the risk by being responsible. Honestly, I mean, anytime you comment, maybe if you're in the heat of the moment, take a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Say, let me check back again if that makes sense. Don't forward anything that is not verified. Anything unverified, don't share it. Don't try to avoid sharing things about specific people, individuals. You don't gain much unless it's something verified, public, and you're sharing public news. Also, my advice also, avoid sharing cartoons. Cartoons are always source of problems because
you mean like caricatures?
Political cartoons, usually because somebody's gonna say, oh, you're misrepresenting somebody, a people. In general, put your views and make sure they are opinions that are not generalizing against any one community. You can criticize governments. Yes, people don't like it. I criticize the Egyptian government, the Syrian government, the Iranian government, the Saudi government, the Israeli government, and I got a lot of heat. I get less heat criticizing my own government, the US government, but it is what it is. But if you're legitimately criticizing a government or a policy of a government, you're safe. Yes, somebody's not going to like it, but it's okay. But don't generalize against an entire people. Don't say all blah, 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 right? It's un-Islamic, number one. It's un-Islamic. It's non-factual. To generalize against all Jews, for example, at a time when we're criticizing Israel, it is un-Islamic. It's immoral. And it's false. It's false. When we see tens of thousands of brave Jews, young and old, risking their jobs, their names, their comfort, their lives sometimes to stand up for our rights when we were attacked under Islamophobia, or the rights of the Palestinian people. So things like that are common sense. Be careful. Don't let the emotions take over whatever you comment on, and you will be fine. 99.9999% of the people are fine. It is the few elements who make mistakes sometimes or are quoted out of context. Sometimes they didn't do a mistake. It is just they've allowed somebody to quote them out of context. Keep up that.
Yes, thank you for that, Hussam. I want to thank both of you for joining this conversation, and also wanted to underscore that this was initiated by the Islamic Shura Council of Southern California under the leadership of Dr. Ahmed Sobah, where we had this conversation, and we said, well, why don't we had about an hour, that wasn't enough, and now we had an hour here. We feel like it's not enough, so let's continue this. And we're happy to host it, or if CARE wants to host it next, we're happy to join, but we should continue talking. And we also wanted somebody from the student groups to join us in the conversation. So maybe next time we can get somebody from there as well. Thank you very much. God bless you for all you do. And we, as Ahmed said, we're all coming at this problem from different angles, different orientations, different perspectives, and that's just natural. That's normal, and in fact, it's helpful. We need a multifaceted approach to this complex issue. No one organization has the answer. No one person is the savior. It really takes the collective, and I'm really proud to be with CARE and Shura Council in this struggle and for human rights and for justice for Palestine, and really for all people. I mean, Palestine is the epicenter of the human rights struggle for the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Have a good night.
Salam.